Okay, I have a few questions for you. I've heard you say on a number of occasions that the decision was made by two senior career civil servants, and it's somewhat it's curious because to my mind, ultimate decisions are made by the politicals. It's the politicals who were working in an administration that were elected. Important decisions regarding policies ordinarily are made by the politicals. But are you saying that in the Obama administration, decisions within the Department of Justice, or at least some decisions, can be made by career civil servants? And it's almost as if they are separate and apart from the political leadership in the Department of Justice.
There are literally thousands of decisions made by the Department of Justice, given the breadth and depth of our collaboration, of our jurisdiction. So, I mean, the notion that every decision would have to come up to an Attorney General would result in gridlock, among other things. But in this case...
But who owns the decisions? Who's responsible for the decision? I understand, and you're completely right. The career civil servants, I've worked with some great lawyers at DOJ. The politicals can't make every decision. But in my experience, important decisions go to the top, and even those that don't go to the top,
sure.
Well, the responsibility and the ownership for those decisions, whether they're right or wrong, rests with the politicals. Is that the
sure.
same approach taken by the Obama administration?
Let me give you how our lines of communication work, because I think this is responsive to your question. We meet regularly with my direct supervisor in the Civil Rights Division is the Associate Attorney General. We meet on a weekly basis to communicate with him what is happening in the division. There are representatives of the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General's office in those meetings, and their coordination meetings. Here are the significant things that are happening. Here are the significant things that are going on in the weeks ahead. Whenever there's a decision involving a case that has attracted attention, when a decision is made, we obviously communicate that up the chain. And clearly I understand the chain of command. If indeed they have an objection or a concern about a decision that we're about to make, it is obviously their prerogative to weigh in and to say, no, I don't want, I'd like to go in a different direction. So, I mean, that happens. That happened when I was in Bush 1, and that happens now. I think that's kind of been the standard operating procedure in the department.
Do we agree that the ultimate responsibility for decisions made at the Department of Justice rests with the representatives of the Obama administration?
Yeah, that's why I'm here today.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you yielded to me earlier. Could I have my second round?
Yes, but hold on. Next up. Okay, you can have the remainder of my time, which was approximately 2 minutes.
Okay. Since I've served in the department in 3 administrations, mostly in administrations, I'm delighted that you've clarified what if we do nothing else, what the official position is. But here's my simple question. It would have been much more effective if you had communicated that directly to everyone in the division. I understand that there was a request that your confirmation be upheld by members of the House to the Senate because they weren't getting information on this case. Whether that's true or not, I strongly suspect you followed the press accounts of this case. There were many press accounts suggesting that the new Black Panther suit was dismissed because there was a view that the Voting Rights Act should not be enforced against black defendants. Then you came into the division, we had Chris Coates in his farewell address, the chief of the voting section suggest that. Why didn't you issue a statement to your department? These press reports are wrong. And to the extent that anyone thinks otherwise, it is not the policy, and it shall not be the policy of my division to not enforce the Voting Rights Act against people of certain races. Did you do that?
I have many friends in the press, Commissioner, If I have to issue a press release
No,
every
not the
time
press
I have
release.
to correct the
Did
record
you-
of something in
why
the press,
didn't you issue
I'd
a
be issuing a
statement to
lot
your
of press
department
releases.
with all of these stories, with Chris? Why didn't you issue a statement to your staff, orally, in writing, whatever form you chose? Why didn't you tell your staff, these stories are wrong? If anyone has these views, I reject it. You better not have these views. Why didn't you do that?
Sir, I've communicated from day one. My first or second day on the job, I met with everybody in the Great Hall, and I said, our job is to enforce the law, all the laws, and to do so even-handedly. I then went to each and every section within the first week of my job, and I reiterated that our job is to enforce the laws, all of the laws, and to do so even-handedly.
Okay,
And I've
Mr.
done
Perez,
that
my
repeatedly.
2 minutes has expired. Up next is Vice Chair Thernstrom.
I would like to actually yield at the moment my time to Commissioner Yaki, and if there's time left over, to please come back to me.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Assistant Attorney General, this hearing is part of an evidentiary process for our annual report. And our statute states that the Commission shall submit to the President and Congress at least one report annually that monitors federal civil rights enforcement efforts in the United States. I say that because it does talk about federal civil rights enforcement efforts in the United States. I'm going to pose not a hypothetical, but a likely scenario to you, and I'd like you to get your response to it. We have here, through what you've seen here today and in other hearings, evidence that two individuals at a single precinct in Philadelphia, a predominantly African-American precinct, engaged in, at minimum, very bad behavior and at worst, voter intimidation. Certainly in the case of Mr. Shabazz, I think we all agree that carrying a nightstick and acting in a threatening manner to me and apparently to you or to the division as well constituted an 11B violation. But of course, what's interesting and what doesn't get brought up is the fact that that judgment was enforced. That judgment was taken through to completion. The second thing that isn't often brought up is that Shabazz was gone by about 10 o'clock in the morning. Only Mr. Jackson stayed. Shabazz was asked to leave by the Philadelphia police, and that indeed did happen. Since that time, and perhaps this may have gone into your decision making, I don't know, but there were no complaints filed by any voters. There were no allegations made by the so-called terrified poll worker that I referenced earlier on. There's no direct evidence linking the statement made by a witness here saying there was a terrified poll worker, which was essentially hearsay evidence, to any direct evidence by a poll worker saying that they were terrified by Mr. Shabazz. There was never, there's been no evidence produced that this precinct had any, there was some evidence produced that maybe 2 or 3 people may have turned away from voting at that particular time. But as I said, Mr. Shabazz was gone by 9:30. No one knows exactly how long Mr. Jackson stayed. No one knows if those people came back and voted eventually. No one has produced evidence that this had any impact on the precinct vote. And in fact, I would probably surmise that the precinct vote was probably substantially higher than it was in previous years. No one has really brought up the fact, except you have here today, about how the decision, how other cases, I think more egregious decisions have been egregious cases of potential 11B violations have come forward and been declined by the Department of Justice on at least 2 occasions. And I know of at least 3 or 4 others that were brought at least to U.S. Attorney level and never apparently saw the light of day at Justice during the previous administration as well.